Hello, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to open this session today and to welcome all the panelists and our guests on Zoom and all those who will follow us live on Facebook. There will be time for questions after session 1 and after session 2. Please, if you're on Zoom, post your questions in the Q&A tab exclusively and on Facebook in the conversations. Today's theme is IEC in Africa and Africa in the IEC. IEC in Africa because the IEC already provides much of the foundation for quality infrastructure, energy access, better healthcare devices, manufacturing, and much more for many African countries. It also provides the basis for free trade across the continent and the world. And it facilitates or will facilitate the interconnection of electricity across the continent and beyond. International standards together with conformity assessment are important tools for policymaking and regulation, and they help protect citizens from unsafe products, keep them safer overall, allow them to have better health care through safe and reliable devices. It also helps stop the inflow of low-quality products and, last but not least, allows local manufacturers to build products that can compete globally. Africa in the IEC because we want more African countries to participate in the IEC, to make their voice heard, to share their needs. It makes it easier to make standards more relevant and easier to adopt in African countries, both existing standards, but also future standards. I now pass on the floor to the IEC President for the official opening of the session. Joe Cobbs, please.
Thank you very much, Gabriella. Dear all, dear esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to open up this session about the IEC in Africa, which is to be moderated by the IEC Communications Director, Gabriella Ehrlich, and with such well-respected panelists and speakers from different countries of this great continent. Africa has always been a key continent for the IEC, but it is so more than ever as we move towards an all-electric, connected and sustainable society. As the continent prepares to meet the challenges of global and sustainable electrification, the IEC will be there both with standardization and conformity assessment systems to embark on this journey towards the future together. We know we will only be able to meet our 2050 climate targets by massively deploying renewable energy systems around the world, including in Africa. For people living in Africa, solar or wind energy can be a way of gaining access to electricity without waiting for the electrical grid to be installed. Solar photovoltaic energy, especially, is seen as having a huge growth potential in Africa. The IEC ensures that performance and safety requirements specified in IEC standards are met through different conformity assessment systems. This gives African consumers the assurance that the photovoltaic panels they have installed will work and not need to be replaced after a limited period of time. This enables the market in turn to grow. The different showcases which will be highlighted during the session and the potential growth areas, including in artificial intelligence, will, I hope, bring us all a great deal of insight on this future journey. I welcome all the fantastic speakers and look forward to a most inspiring session.
Thank you, Mr. Cobbs. I now invite Dr. Hassan Hassanin, who is the president of the IEC National Committee of Egypt. He will share with you some thoughts of what the IEC can offer Africa, how IEC work can support Africa. Dr. Hassanin, please.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gabriella. Mr. Jacobs, IEC President. Mr. Francois Houti, Director of IEC African Regional Center. Ms. Gabriella Rich, IEC Director of Communications. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of my country and as a head of the National Committee of Egypt, I wish you all fruitful and successful open session, and we would be pleased to welcome you all in Cairo. It gives me great honor and pleasure to speak to my brothers in Africa continent today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a well-established fact that energy is a central catalyst to economic and human development. There is an ample amount of evidence, both historically and in the current economic situation in many developing countries, that there is a clear link between access to sustainable and modern energy services and poverty alleviation. Electricity in particular increasingly permeates all aspects of today's life. Increasing level of access to electricity in developing countries will help in paving paths to economic prosperity and well-being. Africa remains the continent with the least developed energy system and modern energy access in the world. Currently, about 600 million African people don't have access to reliable electricity, while over 70% of African population still relies on biomass for meeting their cooking needs. In sub-Saharan Africa, only 17% have clean cooking access and less than 40% have access to electricity. The low access to modern energy service for productive application is also another major challenge, which is threatening industrial development in the continent. The paradox is that Africa has huge amounts of energy resources in terms of both renewable energy and fossil fuels that could provide modern energy access for all Africans. These huge amounts of energy resources in the continent present opportunities to easily develop the African energy system at the local, national, and regional levels, using a combination of both small and large-scale energy technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, the IEC can offer Africa a range of benefits through its standards and conformity assessment activities. Here are some key ways in which the IEC can contribute to advancing African economics. In the field of global standards, the IEC develops and publishes international standards that cover a wide range of areas, including electrical engineering, electronics, and related technologies. By adopting and implementing these standards, African countries can align their industries with global best practices. This facilitates international trade, enhance product quality and safety, and promotes interoperability, thereby opening up new markets and opportunities for African business. In the field of harmonization and compatibility, the IEC standards ensure harmonization and compatibility of electrical and electronic products, systems, and services. This is particularly important for African countries that seek to develop their industrial sectors and participate in global supply chains. Adhering to IEC standards enables the African manufacturers to produce goods that meet international requirements making their products more attractive to export markets and fostering economic growth. In the field of conformity assessment, the IEC provides guidance and frameworks for conformity assessment producers, including testing, certification, and inspection. By establishing robust conformity assessment systems based on IEC guidelines, African countries can ensure the safety, quality, and the reliability of their products. This in turn builds consumer confidence, reduces trade barriers, and facilitates market access for African goods and services. Ladies and gentlemen, the IEC supports technology transfer and capacity building initiatives in developing countries, including those in Africa. Through training programs, workshops, and knowledge sharing, the IEC helps build the local expertise in standards development, conformity assessment, and related areas. This empowers African stakeholders such as regulators, manufacturers, and testing laboratories to actively participate in the global standardization process and contribute to shaping future standards. The IEC recognizes the importance of sustainable development and works on standards that address energy efficiency, renewable energy, and environmental considerations. By embracing these standards, African countries can promote sustainable practices, reduce energy consumption, and mitigate the environmental impact of their industries. This not only contribute to global sustainability goals, but also enhance the competitiveness of African economics in the green technology sector. Ladies and gentlemen, as a conclusion, the IEC can offer Africa a comprehensive framework of international standards and conformity assessment practices. By leveraging these resources, African countries can enhance their industrial competitiveness, expand trade opportunities, and promote sustainable development, ultimately driving economic growth and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassanin, for your comprehensive overview of the many advantages the IEC offers to African countries. We will get into more details later in this session. I would like to now pass on the mic to Francois Ahoti, who is the director of the IEC Africa Center in Nairobi, and he will give you some background on the open session and why we are organizing this today. Francois, please.
Thank you, Gabriela. Mr. Jacobs, IEC President, Dr. Hassan Hassani, President of Egypt National Committee of IEC, dear IEC officers, distinguished panelists and participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to share some background information on this IEC General Meeting Open session. This session is focused on Africa. Indeed, Africa is a big continent regard to its size, its population, its human and natural resources. Africa is seen as the continent of the future, a continent of opportunities, and this is true. Yet, Africa is facing a lot of challenges. Lack of electricity and technical capacities or facilities to check the quality of imported or locally produced electrotechnical equipment and devices are two of those challenges. We can add that Africa's has a low level participation in the global trade, which is around only 3%. To tackle these challenges, the African Union launched two important agreements: the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the Africa Single Electricity Market. These two agreements recognize the importance of standards and conformity assessments. On the other hand, the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, is a globally recognized organization that set international standards and provide conformity assessment services for products and systems that are safe, efficient, reliable, and perform as intended in the electrotechnology area. This sector represents around 24% of the global trade. Therefore, IEC work can help Africa to build answers to its challenges and support the implementation of the two continental agreements mentioned earlier. How can this happen? Today, IEC family in Africa is made of only 4 full members and 7 affiliate members. Most of African countries are participants in the affiliate country program, and Africa's participation in IEC is around 1% out of the 20,000 IEC experts worldwide. We do think that having IEC in Africa and Africa in IEC can really help. Since May 2023, we have managed to organize what we call the IEC in Africa webinar series. We heard during this series from African young professionals, power utilities, government representatives, industries, regulators on the IEC work and its benefit for Africa. For this final discussion of today, we will hear from 2 sessions. The first session will present showcases on how IEC standards are adopted at the continental and sub-regional levels, and how IEC conformity assessment systems are implemented in Africa and their benefits. The second session will turn around key topics for the future, as the president of IEC have said it, like artificial intelligence in Africa, sustainable energy and hydrogens, IEC and the power utilities, and the role of the young professional in Africa's future. For these 2 sessions, our eminent panelists are called to make connections between Africa's challenges and the support IEC work can bring to Africa. From these few words on the context of the ICGM 2023 open session, let's start our discussion to find ways to have IEC in Africa and Africa in IEC for the benefit of the 2 parties. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ahoti, for this great overview of the session program. We'll start now with our first session, and we'll hear from the speakers how IEC work can help make rational use of energy, help build quality infrastructure that also allows to mitigate the influx of substandard products, electrical and electronic devices, and how it can support the industrialization of Africa and trade from Africa to global. Our first speaker is SAER DIOP. He is the Director General of the Economic Energy Agency under the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy in Senegal. He will share with you how the successful use of IEC standards aided the implementation of national regulations in Senegal. Mr. Diop, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gabriela. Mr. the President of the IEC, Mr. the Regional Director of IEC, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure for me to take part in this prestigious opening session panel, which gives our country the opportunity to discuss the contribution of standard to technical regulations. Let me just remind you that last year at the same time, we were in San Francisco during the IEC General Meeting Assembly, where I also had the honor of sharing Senegalese national policy on energy efficiency. So the IEC General Assembly is included in the institutional calendar of Senegal through the ministries in charge of standardization and that in charge of energy. Let me start my presentation by a little bit of IMO, the National Energy Conservation Agency, that I am lucky to lead. As you can see, our mission is mainly to promote energy efficiency and energy conservation in Senegal for all energy subsector and parties. Talking about a successful implementation of standards and regulations, I will first present the efficient lighting program. As you can see, we have a mandatory regulations on the requiring to follow up a conformity assessment process for all importations of lighting appliances. The National Electrotechnical Committee in one of the key players in this process and is responsible of the validations of all the international certificates submitted in order to have clearance for the national market. Next slide. We have a total of 5 regulations only for lighting and a conformity assessment procedure, as I have already mentioned, and the standards only on lighting for building and street lighting are about 18 standards. A national testing laboratory is also implemented by our agency and is being operated in partnership with the National Electrotechnical Committee and also the university. Next slide. So before going to the second example of successful implementation, I will present a little bit the situation in terms of regulation, which mandatory standard for energy efficiency and renewable energy. In addition to lighting, refrigerator, and air conditioner are also concerned with the same mandatory standard imposed by the EcoFridge program, with the development of eligibility criteria for this appliance based on IEC standards. The National Electrotechnical Committee is responsible of the conformity assessment. We also have regulations that makes mandatory some standard on renewable energy appliance and a national testing laboratory. It is also implemented. These regulations rely on incentive measure with VAT exemption for solar certificate equipment. Next slide. The government of Senegal has placed standardization as a national priority. The establishment of successful regulation required the establishment of a normative frameworks involving as closely as possible political decision makers, manufacturers, electrotechnical products importer, the academic sectors, laboratories, consumer associations, as well as all relevant stakeholders. For illustrations, we have some regulation taken in the electricity sector. For example, a presidential decree in 2017 relating to the mandatory control of conformity of indoors electrical installations. It is switched on by the National Electricity Company. Also, an incentive measure taken by the government in 2020 by exempting from VAT a list of 22 materials used for the production of renewable energy. Just note that to benefit from this VAT exemption, the electrotechnical equipment concerned must be certified according to the international IEC standard adopted in Senegal. An interministerial decree in 2021 also relating to the control of conformity of energy-saving lamps. Finally, we plan to take regulations relating to the control of electrical equipment used in indoor electrical installations. Next slide. What is important is to note throughout this diagram is that Senegal, by participating in IEC affiliate country program, had already signed the ACAS declaration letter in December 2019, through which our country officially recognized the certificate of conformities as well as the associated test report used with the IEC conformity assessment system. This recognizing of a certificate has greatly supported us in the implementations of the exemption for equipment used in the production of renewable energy. We have therefore two paths in terms of controlling solar products. The first, if the products have a certificate of conformity authenticated by IEC through the National Electrotechnical Committee, they benefit from the exemption VAT. Second, if the products are not certified of the are not certified of the certificates, or the certificates are not valid, the importer are directly to the designed laboratory for testing. And if the tests are not conclusive, the exemption is granted. Otherwise, the importer is obliged to pay the VAT. It is this note that I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diop, for outlining this very interesting success story from Senegal. I would like now to pass on the floor to Benson Bundi. He is the Principal Inspection Technicians, Quality Inspection at the National Committee of Kenya. He will talk to you about or share with you the results of their involvement of ICEE for the quality assessment of imported products before they enter the Kenyan market. Mr. Bundi, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Gabriela. To our participants, welcome to this session. I'm going to present to you or to explain to you how we recognize IC certificate in our conformity assessment. So as you have heard, my name is Benson Bundi. I work at KEBS as a conformity assessment officer. I've worked at KEBS for the last 15 years. And I have a wide knowledge on the conformity assessment. KEBS is a national standard body with a mandate of developing standards and conformity assessment to product. In the year 2020, the import regulations in Kenya were revised. And by this revision, registration of imported products was, okay, let me take that again. So by the revision of the import regulation in 2020, registration of imported product was to be based on valid certification recognized by KEBS. So from then, IEC certificates are recognized by KEBS for imported electrical and electronic products. So we move to the next slide. So let me explain to you how this process works. So the manufacturer of the electrical product obtain an IEC certificate from the national standard body under IEC system and forward that certificate to the Kenya importer. Step 2, the importer in Kenya applies for the KEBS registration, attaching the test certificate obtained from the IEC system. Step 3, KEBS validates that IEC certificate using the access control on the IEC website. And if the certificate is valid, then register that electrical product. Let's move to the next slide, please. So at that point, the importer is given permission to import the registered product into Kenya. So upon importation of the electrical product, clearance from the custom area is based on the IEC certificate and registration certificate that had been issued by KEBS. And at the same time, the importer is given a very important mark we call KEBS standardization mark to allow the goods to get into the Kenyan market. Let's move to the next slide. So to ensure that there are quality products in the Kenyan market, KEBS undertakes a market surveillance to confirm that the product in the market conforms to the applicable standard. And in the market surveillance, we also sample products that are imported and get access to the market using the IEC certification system. Next slide, please. So we have implemented this for the last 3 years. And I'm here to explain or to explain to you the benefits that we have realized so far since we started accepting products or electrical products with IEC certificates. One, importers in Kenya have really benefited in reduction of costs that is associated to testing, because you realize you only test once and we accept those goods into the Kenyan market. Also, costs are reduced with regards to delay. There is no need of the importer waiting to inspect the goods again. IC certificates are sufficient for them to bring the goods into Kenya. The other benefit is it's helped in a reduction of trade barriers. So we recognize or we accept those electrical products with IEC certificate, with not subjecting them to any other conformity assessment. We have also seen improvement of quality of products in the market. Reports from market surveillance indicate that there is 100% compliance with applicable standards for electrical products certified under IEC system. Another benefit is that Kenya has strengthened relation with IEC since we started accepting the IEC certificate. We have involved IEC in our conformity assessment, and they are able to guide us on how best to implement the conformity to standard of electrical products. Another benefit is that comes with this acceptance of this IEC certificate is that now IEC family provide a pool of experts and engineers with wide knowledge in electrotechnical field, and we are able to consult and share ideas anytime we have any electrotechnical challenges here in our nation, Kenya. Participants and my fellow African members, I wish to recommend other African countries to embrace the IEC systems of conformity assessment, because we have seen the benefit of actually accepting IEC certificate in imported products, and we have seen the improvement of quality for the electrical products in our market. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bundi, and thank you very much for your enthusiastic endorsement of IECEE CB scheme. And I'm sure that the last slide you presented with the many advantages is of particular interest for many other African countries. Thank you. I would like now to pass on to Mrs. Omneya Sabri, who is the Executive Secretary of the African Electrotechnical Standardization Commission, AFSEC, and she will explain how standardization and conformity assessment are the basis for free trade and infrastructure agreements throughout Africa. Mrs. Sabri, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be a part of this open session. Thank you so much for IEC. I'd just like to introduce AFSIC. AFSIC is the electrotechnical standardization in Africa was recognized by top African to ensure the reliable and safe operation of the evolving Pan-African power grid. For this was the initial motivation for the formation of AFSIC in 2008 as subsidiary body of the African Energy Commission, AFRIC, where AFSIC has a major role to support electrotechnical industrialization of Africa with adequate quality and reliability by promoting for everything related to electrotechnical standardization, focusing on harmonization of standards and conformity assessment. AFSIC review and adopt IEC international standards. One of its major work is to harmonize and adapt standards to African conditions. AFSIC, as one of the pillars of the Pan-African Quality Infrastructure PACI, is introduced in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, AFCFTA, in Annex 6. According to this agreement, the member states who ratified the agreement will use the adopted electrotechnical standards that as adopted by AFSIC. The benefits of these standards adopted will ensure consistent quality of products and services for the creation of a single market in Africa and will facilitate access to international markets by aligning African products with global requirements. Next, please. I'd like here to talk about the success stories in AFSIC. Till now, AFSIC has adopted 291 standards from different institutions, IEC, IEEE, SENELEC, according to the MOU sign. And from this standard, 280 were provided by IEC. According to the adaptation of the standards, standards have been adapted into the African conditions following the ISO IEC Guide 21-2. One of the things that recognize AFSIC is the guides that are published, which are considered as interpretation of the standards and use cases for developers, installers, and power utilities. One of the guides that I can focus here is the Rural Electrification Guide that gives to the developers use cases for installing solar energy systems, so photovoltaic systems, as well as the smart metering guide in Africa. This guide is used for the smart metering in Africa as well. The electrical installations, the conformity assessment, the electromagnetic compatibility, and these guides have been published by the technical committees in AFSIC that are 6 technical committees mirror of IEC. With AFCFTA, one of the success stories that we are part of the implementation plan of the Annex 6 of the agreement, and an MOU will be signed in the coming weeks with the AFCFTA, covering cooperation in standardization and conformity assessment activities. Different agreements or MOUs have been signed with IEC, the adoption agreement, with SENELEC as a copyright declaration, the IEEE, and others companies working in standards. The database that have been designed and developed by the IT department of the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy in Egypt for AFSIC to avail for the countries adopted standards to enter the standard that's been about inter-countries via the database admins that have been trained for this purpose, as well as the testing facilities in the member states. There are forms that are available on the website, and it's online adoption. So any database admin via his country to enter his the adoption of standards is online, shown on the website. The same for the testing facilities. One of the success stories as well is the study committee that have been established with the African Power Utilities Association, APUA. We work together via this study committee to work on the interconnection guide as well as the smart metering guide, and in general in standardization covering all African countries. We have joint committees, a set of joint committees with ARSO, the African Standardization Organization, where more than 3 technical committees in AFSIC are working together with the relevant joint committees in ARSO, in standardization and conformity assessment. The one professional program in AFSIC is similar to the one in IEC, and we have till now 8 countries presenting 8 members, in addition to Egypt, to work and to be introduced in the work of standardization process in AFSIC. And we will have the first young professional meeting will be held in Cairo next month. And I see Pizzo is one of the young professional presenting his country in this meeting, inshallah. Thank you so much. This is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sabri, for this excellent overview. I think we are now moving into the Q&A session, and I would like to remind the participants on Zoom and on Facebook that there is a possibility to ask for questions. People on Zoom, please post it directly in the Q&A tab. Mr. Diop, before we start answering questions from the audiences online, I would like to ask you a question regarding your presentation. So you shared with us your successful adoption of IEC standards into the national regulation in Senegal. I imagine there will be other countries, and hope so, that there will be other countries who will be following into your footsteps. And could you share what it takes to achieve such a successful implementation into a national regulation? Maybe also what kinds of hurdles countries are likely to face, and maybe some tips. Over to you.
Hello, thank you, Ms. Sabriella. I say my answer for this question is if the certificate is not allowed, the importer have to send the product to the laboratory for tests. And if the test is right, when the test pass, the product is now exempt for VAT. But when the test is not passed and the certificate not passed, the product is not allowed to benefit to VAT from Senegal. I don't know if it is the question.
Did you encounter any hurdles in bringing the adoption of the standards into the Senegalese national regulation?
Yes. So the situation in the country also, I think we have an opportunity of these regulations because lightning is considered to be a good UC to face peak load for electricity demand instead of investing much more in power generation. So the hardness was the mainly time we spend to make things really works. And also we need to try and save the customs, the department in charge of trade, and we have to conduct a lot of communications for a better understanding of the regulations. Also, we have some lobbies were there, and the fact that we have a lot of, for example, for lightning appliance that being imported in the an informal also manner.
Thank you for this information. Mr. Bundy, now you have adopted ICEE CB scheme. I think a lot of the messages are there, but what would you tell a country who wants to apply the CB scheme? How do they have to go about it? What do they need to do?
Thank you, Gabriela, for that question. When the import regulations in Kenya were revised and IEC certificate became part of recognition for electrical products, we applied to IEC, whom upon our application, they requested us to give the number of product category that we would like to recognize the certificate. So it's very simple. You just apply to IEC and giving the list of the product that you'd like to recognize. And that's all. Within a period of 1 month, we were given the rights by IEC to recognize their certificates. On the other side, even when you are not a member, you can still use the resources of the IEC by just logging into their system, and they have facilities where you can be able to validate the test certificate, so long as those test certificate has been issued under the IEC system.
That is great, thank you. So in sum, it's quite easy and quite fast.
Exactly.
Mrs. Sabri, you have shared your vision for a future single market in Africa. And I was wondering what your vision is for the role of AFSEC in the coming years.
Thank you, Gabriela, for the question. So AFSEC, having made their strategic goals for the next 4 years that will be addressed to the General Assembly very soon, next year. This strategic goal focuses on the more contribution with international institutions working in standards, as well as the work with other companies that are working in standards. We have started some work with some of the companies working in the continent, especially in the smart metering standardization. So this is so far what we are is to strengthen the work in standards and in the conformity assessment, especially that we need to make more work on it. We have already published the conformity assessment guide part 1, and we are working on the second part with the conformity assessment committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll pass on to some of the questions from the audience. Basically, there is one question by Mr. Shaibu Mludi, who says, who is responsible for the certification of the product? Is it a regulator or standard bureau? I guess I can answer that. Basically, the members of the IEC and the other conformity assessment systems are testing laboratories, are well-known companies around the world who are doing the testing and certification, so that in the country you can then approve that certificate and basically let the product in. I don't know, Mr. Bunde, if you want to add anything to this.
Okay, thank you, Madam Gabriela. Yes, you have correctly explained how the process works. So the certification is done by the national certification body under the IEC systems of conformity assessment. After obtaining a test report from a certification body testing laboratory, then they do evaluation to see whether the product complies with the requirement of the standard, and they perform inspection to ensure the product also meets the physical inspection of the product, and with that they issue an IEC test certificate. So on our side, as the regulator, we accept that test certificate and allow the product to enter into the market without further testing or inspection or any other form of conformity assessment.
Thank you. Mr. Diop, you have a question from the audience. Basically, when you mandated standards into your national regulation, Martin Lind would like to know, have you faced some challenges or pushback from the market?
Thank you. I want to talk first that we plan to be associate member of IEC, and then to participate in IEC with the national standard body. So for that with the IEC, we are doing the necessary actions to achieve this objective. So as you know, we can take advantage from IEC CB still without being member of IEC.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Ahoti regarding somebody wants to know, anonymous wants to know, how many members benefit, no, actually this is for Omneya Sabri, how members benefit from being a member of AFSEC and IEC, and whether that would not be redundant, and to what extent AFSEC customizes in the African context.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the question. Yes, we as AFSEC, the technical committees working in different electrical aspects has representatives from the member states of from different African countries. And these representatives, they work together in reviewing the IEC standards, and accordingly, when these standards are adopted by the Council, these standards are available now for the countries to adopt them, as they have been already reviewed on the level of AFSEC. So this sharing of experience within the technical committee will provide to the country the adapted standard and then adopted standard to the country to cope with the African conditions. And when this standard that has been adopted, we give weight to the African country to present this adaptation of standards at the IEC committee. This will give more contribution of African countries in the IEC technical committees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another question for Mr. Bundi from the audience. I would like to know if the whole system of conformity assessment in Kenya is based on regulations.
Yes, the whole systems of conformity assessment in Kenya is based on regulation, and there are different regulations for different regimes of product. There are those that are locally manufactured, and there are also regulations for imported products. For imported product, the regulations provide for recognition of IEC certificates in acceptance of electrical and electronics products into our Kenyan market.
Thank you, Mr. Bundi. We have a question for both Mr. Diop and Mr. Bundi regarding your approach and capacity to locally test electrical and electronic standards that have no IEC certificate. And secondly, if there is a problem of counterfeiting and of fake certificates. Maybe Mr. Diop first.
Yes, when we receive a product, first, if the certificates are not valid, the product have the importer have the possibility to send the product to the laboratory. So when the product pass the test in the laboratory, they can benefit to the exemption of VAT. But we need only one of the two conditions to have this exemption for the product.
Mr. Bundi, would you like to add something from the Kenyan perspective?
Yes, Madam Gabriela. There are two questions. One is on the capacity to test product without IEC certificate. Yes, and that is one of the benefits of integrating IEC systems in all conformity system in the conformity assessment of particularly electrical products, because one of the challenges and one of the reasons why we had to revise Kenya had to revise the regulation, particularly on electrical product, is that sometimes there is lack of capacity to, particularly on performance, testing performance of electrical product. And the IEC provide a platform where by accepting their certificate, you have the benefit of having this product being tested by laboratories that are not in Kenya. They are tested in the countries where they have capacity, particularly on to test performance specifications as per the IEC standards. So we benefit from that resource that is provided by IEC. On the issue of counterfeiting of the certificate, IEC has a system where you can be able to validate the certificate, the test certificate that is issued by IEC system. So any certificate that had been issued by the IEC network, you're able to validate and confirm that that certificate is valid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bundi. We have also a question for Mrs. Sabri. Basically, what is AFSEC's role in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement dialogues, and does AFSEC promote IEC work as the basis for the agreements related to the electrotechnical standards and conformity assessment?
Thank you for the question. Yes, maybe I have shown in the presentation that the standards that are adopted by AFSEC according to the agreement will be adopted by the member states who ratified the agreement. As per the Annex 6 of the AFCFTA agreement. And we work together with the AFCFTA on the implementation plan of what is in the Annex 6 regarding AFSEC work. This kind of implementation plan include the adoption of standards, the international standards, and how will be these standards promoted at the level of the member states in the FCFTA. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question to all the panelists. Basically, the African Union Agenda 2063 talks about the need to minimize environmental and developmental trade-offs while safeguarding natural capital. It seems IEC members in Africa, along with African stakeholders, can play a major role in meeting these goals. So the question to you is, do you see opportunities for more stakeholders from Africa to be contributing their knowledge towards these outcomes? Who would like to start answering that question? Mrs. Sabri?
Okay. So we have worked on a communication strategy in order to get more and more stakeholders in AFSEC work. We have the regional economic communities, the CREs, the centers of renewable energy efficiency, the regulators as well. We have an MOU with the Egypt ERA to work with different regulators and so on. I just like not to forget somebody. So in this contribution in AFSEC work will give the opportunity for all these stakeholders to work together with AFSEC to ensure promoting for the work of standardization, which is, as we said in our presentation, that it will ensure the consistent quality of products, and this quality of product will share in the environment and to have a encourage the work on the renewable energy and energy efficiency to contribute in saving the environment in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diop?
Yes, I think we agree for that. According to the reduction of gas in the environment, the Senegalese politics is to increase now our mix of renewable energy in our mix of energy. Now in Senegal, we have around 30% of renewable energy in our global electricity production. And also, we are working to increase the part of energy efficiency. And that is my challenge. I think according to the energy agency, International Energy Agency, it is more impacted now to develop energy efficiency to reduce to protect environment. So in Senegal, I think now the challenge is to increase more the rate of renewable energy, but also to develop energy efficiency. We have many products in energy efficiency that will impact really our imprint carbon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diop. And Mr. Bundi, last but not least, any comments from your side to this question?
I'll take this from the angle of conformity assessment and reiterate that if Africa embraces the IEC conformity assessment programs, and there are quite a number, ranging from the electrical and electronics products to renewable energy, then we'll have high quality products in our continent that, and we are able to get the value for the money spent on buying those electrical products, or even the systems that are put in place. So my take will be that we embrace the IEC conformity assessment programs for the benefit of our continent in terms of high quality products.
Thank you. I have one more question for both Senegal and Kenya. And the person wants to know how you were promoting with importers the need to bring a certificate for the technical regulation. Mr. Diop, maybe.
Exactly, can you please repeat the question? What is the?
Yeah, sort of how are you, or how were you promoting with importers that they need an IEC certificate for to satisfy the technical regulation?
I think we have a list of many firms who do certification. So we do the communication with importer to sensibilize, to inform her how to have the certificate and which firm are agreed in Senegal for certifications. I think we have a big, doing now a big effort of communication to importer to show her how to have the good certificate. Yes, CB certificate, yes.
There is an additional question for you, which is at which point in your market is the verification happen? Is it at the port of entry, or do you do market inspections? How do you verify that your standards and technical regulations are being followed?
I think I can say that we do the control before the product enter in Senegal. And also sometimes we control the markets. We can go in the market and see if, yes, but generally we do the control when the product is enter in our country.
Thank you, Mr. Diop. I would ask the same question to Mr. Bundi. How is it in Kenya? Do you check at the port of entry? I think you mentioned marketing inspection, but do you also check at the port of entry?
Actually, to promote IEC certificates, we do not check at the port of entry. We do market surveillance. So we do, once we allow the goods to enter into the market with IEC certificate, then independently carry out market surveillance of those goods and do confirmatory tests in our laboratory independently without even informing the importer. We only inform the importer when there is non-compliance. We do independent market surveillance. If compliance is fine, we are satisfied, and we keep on checking in the market. Thank you.
Since you're very familiar with the ICEE CB scheme, we have a question from Facebook, from live stream, for you, Mr. Bundi. Basically, what the person says is unless Africa has adequate testing facilities, it will be not possible for Africa to encourage local production and create employment. Would you say that national testing facilities in the context of the CB scheme is absolutely necessary? Or is it enough to bring certificates into the market, to accept the certificates?
So thank you for that question. Yes, as we encourage the use of IEC certificate, we also encourage the building up of the capacity for our national laboratories to be able to test or to have capacity to test those products, so that we can promote the quality infrastructure in our nation, and also to be able to do a proper market surveillance of those products that have been certified or that has been accepted into the market with IEC certificate.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for right now. Thank you very much to the speakers, and I think we will move on to session 2 now. I would like the speakers of session 1 to please turn off their cameras, and session 2 participants to come on board. In session 2, we will have a look at how Africa can influence IEC work. We'll talk about Africa in the IEC and potential growth areas. African countries often complain that they are standards takers. In the IEC, they can be standards makers. Standards makers by contributing actively or by making their needs known. In this session, we will also look at how the younger generation can contribute and benefit of IEC, and how Africa can play an increasingly important role in new technologies, upcoming technologies such as AI, but also renewable energy, and in particular hydrogen. The first speaker I'd like to introduce is Engineer Abel Tella. He is the Director General of the Association of Power Utilities in Africa, APUA. He will talk about the importance of electricity access and electrification in general in Africa, and how the development of power infrastructure in Africa can directly accelerate industrial development, energy transformation, and the ability to trade cross-continentally, cross countries, but also across the world. And he will highlight some of the links between electrification and all these areas, which may not be completely obvious from the start. Mr. Teller, please.
Thank you, Gabriela. I recognize the president of EIC, Jacobs, the Secretary General and the chairman of the Egyptian National Committee, the Director African Office of IEC, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have the presentation, please? I'm bringing the greetings from APOA and its chairman of the board, the president of APOA, Honorable Papa Madeba Bitié, the CEO of Senegal. That said, I'll be focusing in the value chain of electricity from generation to the last consumer. In the value chain, we have the first point is generation, and generation in Africa is very diverse according to the region, according to the country, and the available resources. In North Africa, is dominated by thermal, gas fire is predominant, with many renewable energy infrastructure coming on now. West Africa is also thermal, but now gas-fired, and some liquid fuel still remaining in West Africa, with significant renewable starting by hydro, solar, and some wind on the Atlantic coast. The Eastern Africa is dominated by more renewable energy, and you know that is a hydro-based country. Ethiopia, Sudan is coming on, and the central is dominated by thermal also, and the soft part by thermal, coal-fired, and renewable energy. On transmission, that is there where the standard is key for transmission, because you cannot transmit energy if you don't have harmonized standard, and the use of IEC standard is predominated in the transmission for the grid code elaboration and harmonization. And there we, like you said, we are working now on the Continental Master Plan led by Abu Dhabi that can permit us to face the single African electricity market. On the last value chain point, distribution and consumption, clearly we talked about conformity. Now we talk about the quality of supply, security of equipment or the person, and also health of the utility. I mean, meaning by health is the economic, financial, and stability of the utility and the person. So IC standards are in the daily management of the practitioner. And within the forum of regional power pool coordinated by APOA, we now are working on the preparation of the single electricity market, where we set the priority action to the advent of this market. This market cannot be reality if we don't have harmonized standards on the continent. Next, please. So electricity access and energy transition in Africa is a dilemma. You have access, you have also to green and to face the transition. So by reaching the target of 2040, because 2030 is not more possible, reaching the universal access of 2040, we have to have innovative financing, technological, and synergy between actors on the continent. Urban, suburban, and rural development need to be coordinated. Also, industrialization, because we need power for light and power industry. So the industrial and industrial processes need to be based on specific standards. my predecessor talked about how to harmonize the standard of the good products in Africa versus the good products in other part of the world. So African trade within Africa on the trade zone area, also export is good out of the country. Next slide, please. The development of Africa have a huge challenge. First, it's a continent with fast-growing population. Second, many territories are very large territory, and more of the half of population are new and living in urban area. The fast-growing economy with energy needed for the industry, and before solving the energy access, we need to engage in transition. So that's the conflicting challenges that have been being managed in Africa. We need to go fast, but we need to go securely, so that at the same time, we have different level of development. You know that Northern Africa have almost universal access, where you have some countries in Central Africa or Eastern Africa less than 15% access rate. All this combined give the synergy of working together and pulling an effort to have the development of Africa in terms of energy access and powering the industry. Next. So in this, we are working to prepare our member to what is the African utility of the future. We need first to have an harmonizing standard. The country have to comply with universal standard, where the quality based on this standard has to be on track. So we are working with IEC. Omnia talked in his presentation with the adoption of this IEC to Africa condition, and also the main objective of APOA is to build capacity so that Africa should be prepared in terms of human resources to this development. So we launched in 2016 the African Network of Center of Excellence in Electricity, where we have a continental initiative. We have trained in 6 years more than 8,000 people within the power utility. We have 10 centers of excellence that we are seeing in the screen. I'm not going to all of them. We are supported by the African Development Bank and the French Development Agency for the first phase. We have been now ended to its end at the end of this year, where we are preparing the second phase, 2024, 2028, funded by the African Development Bank and other donors. So that is my presentation to place Africa within standard, the movement to a future of African utility in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Teller. I forgot to mention at the beginning, anybody who has questions, whether it's on Zoom or on Facebook, please post them. We'll have time after this to answer some questions. Next, I would like to invite Pitso Sekoto, who is Senior Control Automation and OT Cybersecurity Engineer at the IEC National Committee of South Africa. He has been participating in the IEC Young Professionals Program, and he will share with you the impact of his participation on the one side on the South African National Committee, and on the other side on his company. And last but not least, he will also share his vision from a young professional's point of view for Africa. Pitso Sekoto, please.
Thank you, Gabriela. I'm honored to speak about the IEC Young Professional Program and its profound impact it had in my country and company. So the Young Professional Program is a gateway to the world of standardization. It provides unique opportunities for young professionals to influence standards. These young professionals are handpicked by their respective national committees The program plays a pivotal role in increasing involvement of young professionals in standardization and offer enhanced networking opportunities. The typical participants of the YP program are in their early 20s to their mid 30s, and individuals have some experience with the standards. Thank you. Next slide, please. In my company, Eskom Holdings, a power utility company in South Africa, the IEC standards have been instrumental in driving improvements in various aspects of our operations. The standard ensured that we consistently implemented best practices and operated optimally and safely. The IEC professional program offers young professionals with access to the educational and resources and training. It provides the platform for connecting with experts and peers in the field. Young professionals participating in the program gets the chance to represent the interests of and the needs of their respective companies. Moreover, the program encourages leadership and career growth. The IEC professional program nurtures the next generation of professionals. Okay, for young professionals program to succeed, they must be designed and managed with a focus on recruitment, training, diversity, knowledge transfer, adaptation to the changes, and a clear success metric. So this then therefore means recruitment and selection has to be taken, and it has to be crucial. And then individuals need to be selected with the potential for growth and development. The other challenge that I've identified was that there are lack of mentorship programs. So we need to increase the amount of mentorship programs that we have, and the lack of support from companies, more specifically in Africa, because the young professional programs is still at its early stages. So it will be advised that the IEC can subsidize all the travel costs that are entailed or that comes with the young professionals programs that are being established. And we also have to address the issue of lack of interest of young professionals. We need to increase programs and mentorship programs in order to ensure that young professionals are engaged and remain motivated. So in San Francisco last year, we were able to develop a guide under the leadership of one of our YP leader, Marin Tideman. So we wrote a guide on addressing it to the national committees so that we can assist them on how they can improve their national YP programs. So the guide can be downloaded from the IEC Basecamp and the IEC YP resources. Looking beyond the program itself, on the next slide, we must also consider Africa's potential, especially from a young person's perspective. Young people in Africa are key agents of progress and can contribute significantly to the continent's growth and development. Africa holds immense potential that can be harnessed in various ways. Africa has rich natural resources, and urbanization is actually happening at an alarming rate. So all of these opportunities, when responsibly managed, they can drive economic growth and create a lot of opportunities. Africa's rich cultural diversity is a source of creativity and resilience. Africa is regarded as having the youngest population globally. This youth bulge issue can be seen as a source of strength as young people bring energy, innovation, and fresh perspective to various issues. Improved connectivity and access to the information enables young professionals to connect with the world better. The IEC Young Professional Program is a beacon of opportunities for young professionals to make significant impact in standardization. When harnessed effectively, the potentials of young professionals in Africa can drive positive and innovative impacts, benefiting not only the specific companies, but the continent as a whole. So in conclusion, on the next slide, I would like us to reflect on the powerful words of Nelson Mandela, which says, "The youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow." These words remind us how important it is for us to improve and increase programs that help young professionals in Africa. Thank you very much, Gabriela, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Sikoto. I would like to talk a little bit about, AI is a hot topic, and we have here Mrs. Sally Radwan, who is the Chief Digital Officer of the UN Environmental Programme, who will explain concretely how AI can contribute to African challenges and how the IEC can help. Mrs. Radwan, please.
Thank you, Gabriela. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, esteemed participants. And of course, thank you very much to the IEC for the kind invitation to speak to you today. I come from a different field, obviously. So I hope you'll indulge me as I walk you through these few AI use cases. And rather than start with a theoretical discussion, I thought I'd use my few minutes here with you to talk about two specific use cases, that one of which has been implemented across a number of African countries. Another one has the potential to be implemented in Africa, and then maybe lead on the conversation to more specific topics to the IEC's fields of work. So the three pictures you see in front of you are the three phases of a project that was implemented, or actually is being implemented in Egypt right now, but was also partially implemented in Kenya, and is currently being piloted in a few African countries as well. The idea here is that many African countries still suffer from pretty antiquated agricultural techniques and technologies for many, many reasons. In Egypt, for example, it's the relatively small plot sizes and fragmented arable land, for example, in the Nile Delta. Scarcity of water is another big issue. But also what we see in many African countries is the inability for farmers to access new technologies easily, or to even get advice and be in constant contact with the government for help and support. And
Mrs. Radwan, you're dropping off. Your sound is disappearing just now. Can you get closer to the mic, maybe?
Sure. Sorry about that. Maybe my connection isn't great. I apologize. Please let me know if it drops off again. The first phase of the project, and all three phases are using AI, by the way. The first phase of the project was the AI-based analysis of satellite imagery to detect boundaries of these small fragmented agricultural plots that I talked about, and also to identify the crops being planted, which is a problem when you have lots of small plots. It's very hard for the government, for planning purposes, to keep track of what's being planted where, and also to make plans for subsidies and for transportation of crops and so on and so forth. So this part of the project was implemented to detect, as you can see in the picture on the left pane, but the right-hand picture, where you're able to detect quite accurately where one plot begins and the other ends, and also what crop is being planted and at what stage of growth it is. How does that help us? In addition to planning, it also helps estimate the exact amount of irrigation water needed. In many African countries, we still irrigate by flooding. We just open up the water and flood the fields, which of course not only wastes water, but in many cases also affects the quality of the soil and the crops being planted. And so the second phase of the project, which is still in planning, aims to use AI models to predict how much additional water would be required for irrigation, so that exactly that amount is being utilized. And then finally, the part I talked about, which is the communication between farmers and suppliers, but also the government, to get real-time advice, to get real-time market prices, for example, for their crops, what to plant when. More importantly, the ability to diagnose pests and diseases that they can see on their plants. And by the way, they don't need to be able to read or write for this. They can just snap a picture of a diseased plant and upload it, and they immediately get a diagnosis and the treatment recommendation for this particular pest or disease. So this is a set of solutions, actually, that can be easily scaled across the African continent to utilize AI to help with one of our biggest problems. Next slide, please. The other example is from my current role at the UN Environment Program. And this is what we call the World Environment Situation Room, but specifically, this is an application called the International Methane Emissions Observatory, or IMEO. This hasn't been implemented specifically in Africa yet. IMEO is a global system. However, the AI part comes in the early warning and alert system. So basically what this does, as you can see hopefully in the picture, is it depicts and highlights hotspots of increased methane emissions around the globe. And then the early warning and detection part comes in through an additional application called MARS, which we're piloting now in a few countries, including Argentina, for example, where the nature of the emissions or the probable cause of the emission is estimated, and then an early warning is sent to the government in charge so that they can start taking appropriate measures. Like I said, we've used this successfully in Argentina, where there was a methane hotspot where problems were prevented. But this is an example of a solution that can be easily ported to the African continent. And also, to take this one step further, we don't have to stop at methane. Of course, climate change and environmental sustainability are hot topics now also for Africa, and so is the appropriate utilization of energy. So one of the biggest applications of AI right now is to determine the appropriate mix of energy sources to provide power for the different purposes, depending on many, many factors, including cost, including time of day, consumption levels, peaks, and so on and so forth. So again, a tool like this can be used to detect also the environmental footprint of the different energy sources and determine the most appropriate mix. So this is just hopefully a teaser and a conversation starter around the possibilities for AI in Africa. And of course, happy to continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Radwan. Very exciting, very nice, interesting applications. I would like to now introduce Dr. Hafez Abdel Al-Salmawi, who is Professor of Engineering at the Zagazig University in Cairo, Egypt. He will talk about the advantages and challenges and solutions on sustainable energy and green hydrogen and how IEC work can help. Over to you, Professor. Please unmute.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabriella, and it's a pleasure to be here with this very distinguished gathering. Can I go for the presentation, please? Yes. Actually, I will focus my speech on green hydrogen potential in Africa and development requirements. Basically, hydrogen or green hydrogen is booming as one of the tools for combating climate change. Actually, hydrogen is a kind of derivatives of renewable energy. So hydrogen is a derivative or a tertiary for renewable energy. So it's not something different from renewable, yet it could be used in applications when renewable energy couldn't be used directly. I mean, in its form as electricity. Africa is blessed with an abundant renewable energy resources, as it is quickly gaining recognition as a potential global leader in green hydrogen production. Africa has a strong potential to be hydrogen producer. If we look to the maps at the top right, you will find that Africa is blessed with different type of renewable energy, including both solar, wind, CSPs, as well as biological hydrogen. So yet it might be varied from different zones of Africa, north, west, east, middle, and south, yet all seasons, almost all zones have their own advantages. Furthermore, each zone has more than type of renewable energy, and this is very much important, as I'm going to show later, that hybridization between different types of renewable energy could ensure more operation for the electrolyzer, such that we could get the cheapest possible price. The challenge for hydrogen is basically the value chain of hydrogen include production, storage, transportation, blending, and consumption. And it's very much important to have a kind of standardization for this type of value chain. For example, we should have a general design and safety standard. We should have reciprocal standards, which could be used for transportation piping and pipelines, as well as hydrogen embrittlement. So standardization is a very much important part of this process, as, for example, IEC, the 62282 series for standards for different type of equipment, as well as design. Many aspects for hydrogen business is very much well covered, and it's very much important to design or develop the green hydrogen production in compliance with this. Also, Africa, as most of the green hydrogen, maybe at least in the early phase of the program, will be exported, so hydrogen transportation could represent a kind of challenge to Africa. It depends on the distance and what type of commodity is being transported. That will be a hydrogen molecules, it will be a hydrogen derivatives like ammonia, like methanol, or it could be a kind of green fuel. So basically, depending on the distance and depending on the market, where that market lays, the type of transportation could be changed from pipeline to refrigerant or liquefied hydrogen, or to LOHC, which is liquefied organic hydrogen carrier, which means that hydrogen is being dissolved in another organic solution. And based on the transportation distance and type of commodity, there will be a better selection for the transportation. Next, please. Also, another decision should be taken when we go for developing hydrogen. Are we going to develop hydrogen as an isolated system from our electricity network? So it means that the renewable energy will be directly fed to the hydrogen electrolyzers, and to produce hydrogen will go through pipelines to where hydrogen is being used or being exported, or we will produce renewable energy and part of it will be fed to the hydrogen electrolyzers, and the rest could be fed to the grid. So we could get both benefits from the renewable energy resources, either for hydrogen production as well as to the grid, and this gives much more flexibility depending on the demand of each type. Or we could develop renewable energy on a site and transmit electricity through the grid to an off-site production for hydrogen. So it's very much important to decide how the scheme or how this hydrogen production could be interacted with the existing electricity grid. For sure, most probably the optimum solution might be a kind of a mix of these depending on the case. Next, please. Also, it's very much important if we work with green hydrogen to have a certification system for hydrogen. We should prove that this hydrogen is a green hydrogen or produced from renewable energy sources. Certification of hydrogen rely first, we need to prove that the origin of the renewable energy used for hydrogen production is renewable. So there is what we call it guarantee of origin certificate, and this is usually being issued by the government or any governmental body, could be a regulator, for example. then the sustainability certification, which means that what is the greenhouse gas reduction? It should prove that at least 50 to 80% has an impact in reducing, as well as land use, how much land being used for order to produce that hydrogen. And this is a voluntary scheme, and this is usually being issued by a volunteer operator. And then the delivery, prove the delivery. If you're going to use a pipeline or a shipment, you need to prove through a mass balance how much hydrogen is being represented part of this supply. So basically, you need a GO certificate, which is usually has a unit of 1 megawatt hour, and it goes through a GO registry, which is usually being a national issuing body who issued it. And then you need to have a sustainability, which is based on auditing mechanism, and it should prove that the system has low impact on the environment and production process, and it's usually being voluntarily operator who issues that, and then delivery, which is the system operator who is responsible for the supply chain operation who issues that. The three are necessary to prove that supply is certified as, or consumption is certified as a green hydrogen. Next, please. This curve shows what could be the phases for hydrogen development. We could usually divide the process for hydrogen development into what we can call it a pilot phase, a scale-up phase, and then a full scale. Up till now, hydrogen cost or green hydrogen is higher than gray hydrogen, and for sure higher than natural gas. So we expect, according to that curve, that the green hydrogen might become break even with gray hydrogen in a range between 2030 and 2032. So this is as green hydrogen become break even with gray hydrogen, it means that there will be a very strong potential for hydrogen derivatives like ammonia, like methanol, like used hydrogen in fertilizer or iron steel industry. This will open the door for that. And then around 47, we expect that hydrogen, green hydrogen might go below the cost of natural gas. In that case, hydrogen in that case could be used as a supply energy sources for heat generation, for application where electricity couldn't be used, or for electricity system as a seasonal starch. But for sure, hydrogen is not suitable to be used as a base fuel supply for electricity, because you originally have electricity, you convert it to hydrogen, and you convert it back to electricity. So the advantage of hydrogen is a long-term kind of storage for the electrical system and stabilize with high share of renewable energy. Next, please. This is exactly represents the case of Egypt for how decision could be making along these three phases, where the first phase, which is what we call it the pilot phase, where yet green hydrogen is still more expensive compared to the gray or natural gas in that case. And even there is much more market uncertainty up till now, because this is still a market emerging around the whole world. So it's usually start with pilot project, with pilot exports, and most probably will be focused on that phase on derivatives, because it might not be justified to build like a pipeline for hydrogen or harbor to export hydrogen, but use an existing facility, which is like ammonia exports, methanol exports, which already exist, that kind of a business so far. Also, we could start using the renewable energy, which is being used for focusing on electrification, like electrification, electric mobility or so, and maybe export, use renewable energy developed for exporting electricity. But as hydrogen industry is being upgraded, so it means that we could go possibly for more export and the markets start to be more clearer, as well as we could go for switching for the transportation, and maybe marine and aviation could be a very good and bunkering or refueling aviation and marine with green fuels or maybe hydrogen as so. Then as hydrogen prices go below gray hydrogen, it means that it will open the door quite openly for hydrogen derivatives like ammonia, methanol, which has now become cost competitive compared for using natural gas, as well as implicit export. For example, producing steel using hydrogen or producing fertilizer using hydrogen or whatever products like cement and specifically energy intensive products, it means that implicitly, as you export these products, you implicitly export hydrogen in that products. And then as hydrogen break even with natural gas, now it's come to take a decision that hydrogen could be now could be exported on a larger scale, specifically on a molecule, so pipeline could be used, hydrogen derivatives, still implicit export could be used, as well as using hydrogen as a seasonal energy storage, which will play a very important role in expanding share of renewable energy in our power system. To that point, I conclude my presentation and back to you, Gabriele. Yes.
Thank you, Professor, for this interesting insight into the world of hydrogen. We are now moving on to the question and answers. Please, again, for the audience on Zoom, pose your questions directly in the Q&A tab. And I hope you have many. And the same thing goes for Facebook participants who can put it into the conversation. My first question goes to Mr. Teller. You talked very much about the industrial development and how it depends directly on electrification and electricity access. Now, many countries in Africa are already struggling to just provide basic energy access. You mentioned the need for energy transition, for the integration of renewable energy. How can they achieve that? What does it take to accelerate?
Thank you, Gabriela. We have been putting the energy development on the wrong way for decades because we focus consumers on this combining the mine development with energy. Many African countries are mine giants and in energy poverty. That cannot be. If you develop your mine and you transform a basic local phase of transformation, you need energy. The mine will provide you means to develop energy. So the resources to develop all the continent in energy is within Africa. But we are setting very wrong by exporting raw material and make them transform elsewhere and re-import the product to Africa. If we transform the product in Africa, we need energy. This energy comes to accompany mine development. There, the acceleration will be made significantly.
You're also part of a group of people participating in a concept of global interconnection of energy networks of continents. Can you explain a bit more about that and how realistic is that?
Global energy declaration comes from the UN meeting in 2015 when the president of China launched this initiative through GRECO, the Global Energy Interconnection Cooperation Development. That is use the green energy in different continents by interconnecting to make the right use of green energy, because we have so many different of climate and time. So when you are in the nighttime in some part of the world, you are just in the morning when you need energy, and when you are in winter, some part of the world, you have a summer in other part. So when you don't need energy, there you send the energy to other parts of the world. By this interconnection, we can optimize the use of renewable energy and connect renewable energy where we have fossil fuel. So the transition pass through this global interconnection, and also the real development at least cost planning on the global size, not only a continent, not only a country level, but in the global level pass through this interconnection. So we are working. APOA is one of the partners of GATECO to develop this concept.
Thank you. My next question is to Mr. Sekoto. You elaborated on how your participation in the Young Professionals Program helped your national committee and your company. What was the benefit for you personally? What did you take away? How did you benefit? Please unmute.
Thank you, Gabriela. The Young Professional Program has played a significant role in shaping my career and personal growth. So participating in the program provided me with valuable skills, networks, and experiences. I have been able to step out of my comfort zone and take on new responsibilities and new roles. And I've been able to develop my self-confidence. And I've been able to participate in various young professional programs like the AFSEC program. So this exposure has been to me the best experience I could ever ask for, and it has exposed me to challenges and opportunities. Now I have a much global view of the challenges and the issues, and I'm deeply grateful for the opportunities it has presented me with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sekoto. I would like to pass on the microphone to Catherine Fraga, who was one of the initiators of the Young Professional Program in the IEC, and maybe she has some additional words for Africa, for young professionals, and for the future generation.
Thank you, Gabriela, and it's nice to be here with you and have a session dedicated to Africa as part of the IEC General Meeting. And really, it's for me a great opportunity for us to talk to African countries and encourage you to participate in IEC work. And of course, the IEC Young Professional Program was established to help countries reach out to the younger generation, to the future leaders from their countries, to encourage them to participate and benefit from IEC standardization work and conformity assessment activities. So I suppose my plea would be for all the African members to send young professionals to future young professional workshops. We've been doing a lot of work with specific African countries to try and help them to bring in young professionals. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Mrs. Radwan, AI, as you have shown, has real potential for Africa. Around the world, a lot of people are talking also about the risks of AI and the need for regulation for AI. So my question to you is, how are African countries, to your knowledge, dealing with these aspects on the one side? And also, in order to bring AI to Africa, certainly countries need to attract investment. What will it take?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a very important but also very complex one. We could probably spend an entire session just on that topic. But as you know, there have been efforts underway for the past few years to try and regulate AI globally. Of course, they started with non-binding principles and instruments, something like the OECD principles on responsible AI or the UNESCO recommendation on AI ethics. At the moment, the UN is trying to drive an effort to standardize or to regulate AI globally. For Africa specifically, I would say the landscape is fragmented at best, depending on how far along different countries are in their journey to AI adoption and regulation, and also, frankly, the maturity of the local legal frameworks and the general ICT environment as well. So you will see countries who already have laws regulating certain aspects of AI, intellectual property, for example. Other countries have adopted voluntarily some of the global recommendations, like the OECD or the UNESCO ones. A few African countries have participated in the standardization effort by IEC and ISO over the past couple of years, but there is no unified African position. And there have been efforts to do that. So a few years ago, when I was working for the government of Egypt, within the African Union, we started a working group on AI within the African Union Commission for Infrastructure, where we came up with a 19-point African stance reflecting the priorities of African countries when it comes to AI. And this wasn't just regulation, this was on capacity building, resource mobilization, reflecting African values and priorities and cultural norms and so on. There have been efforts, for example, in bodies like Smart Africa. Within the African Union itself, the Commission on Human Rights also started an effort around AI. But like I said, it's very fragmented, and it's important, especially if there's going to be a global effort for AI governance, that Africa has a unified stance, because unfortunately, the global discussion is dominated by countries who have a lot of power, i.e., who have a loud voice, who have lots of resources, who contribute a lot to AI research, but also who host a lot of the private sector companies that dominate the product landscape, which is unfortunately where most of, well, not unfortunately, but which is where most of the innovation is taking place in AI. And so it's important, if Africa wants to get its voice heard, that we stop these fragmented efforts and unify around a set of common values, principles, like I said, priorities even for the economic protection and prosperity of the African continent, and present that with one voice to the global stage, so that we don't end up with yet another kind of blanket instrument that assumes that everyone has the same needs and everyone is starting from the same point, which is of course not true. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Looking to Africa to play a major role in the development of AI and the use of AI for all kinds of applications. My next question is for Professor El-Samawi. You talked about green hydrogen or hydrogen in general. We know it's really in the talks in COP for several editions now. And the question I have is how to make it safe. You mentioned transport. It's a highly volatile substance. How to make it affordable for African countries and available widely. And is it really the golden bullet for Africa? Please unmute.
Unmuted, yes. Thank you very much. I might start with the last question, which is that could be a golden opportunity for Africa, and how we could make it available for Africa. Actually, hydrogen for Africa might represent opportunity from 2 points. The first point that Africa is lacking, many African countries is lacking natural gas resources, as well as maybe some of them is lacking other type of fuel where they could produce ammonia. And ammonia is very much important for fertilizers and agriculture in Africa. So lack of fertilizers might represent one of the challenges for the capacity of Africa to produce enough food for African with a growing number of population. So hydrogen or green hydrogen will enable to push forward the ammonia industry in Africa, which could lead for fertilizer and could have an impact, very good impact on capacity of Africa for food production. This is first. Secondly, green hydrogen, as it comes with a climate change, there is a growing international market and demand for green hydrogen. For example, a WEC report was just issued jointly with OME at the time in 2021, showing that there will be a deficit of 30 million tons of hydrogen by 2050 in Europe. So this will create a demand that could create a kind of an export opportunity for the renewable energy resources, which are already available in Africa, specifically for far away countries from Europe. So they could transmit it through either refrigerant, liquefied, or whatever possible, depends on the distance away. So this could create a kind of income opportunity to Africa, as well as for sure for know-how transfer. Now we come up with the first part of the question about the risk of hydrogen and as a volatile fuel, or I don't like to name it fuel, a volatile carrying material. It's sure adopting standards. Already there is standards available, as I mentioned in my presentation. There is an IEC standards for transportation, for storage, for consumption, even for design and whatever. So adopting standard from the beginning, both for hydrogen as well as for sure for renewable energy equipment, which is going to be used to produce hydrogen, is very much important step, as well as capacity building, as well as legal framework, which could ensure, for example, safe distance from pipelines transmitting hydrogen, a methodology to deal with any crisis which might happen with any leak could happen or so. So I mean, adopting standards, capacity building, as well as availability for regulations is very much important to be considered.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have a question from Somalia for François Ahoti, basically asking, 1 second, 12:38. Yeah, the question is the following. In Somalia, there's a lack of awareness of the value of standards and the assurance ecosystem, conformity assessment, verification and validation, testing, inspection, accreditation, and ensuring safety, promoting social good, and inspiring innovation through research. What support can IEC provide to demonstrate the importance of the work?
Okay, thank you so much. We are in contact with Somalia. I've been invited on Sunday to join a meeting because they have had a week of quality infrastructure or something like that. And the idea for Somalia here today is to establish the National Electrotechnical Committee, where they will have all the experts coming from the different stakeholders. And from there, we can really start working on the subject they have mentioned. I should say that Somalia is one of the recent countries who have joined the IEC as an affiliate participant. So let's meet and let's continue to talk and see concretely on the ground how we can have answers to some of the questions you have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois Oti. There is a question for Pizzo Sekoto. How do you see the potential for African countries to get more involved in IEC? How can the younger generation be involved in that?
Okay. So the younger generation, okay, firstly, the statistics say in Africa, we have more young generation and more young people. So that simply means we have more people, or a vast group of people that we can use, and they can participate in the IEC Young Professional programs, and they can take on leadership roles and actually have bring the energy and the new perspective to the African solutions, because we are more energetic, and we understand the issues of Africa, and we can see the potential of Africa, and we would like to basically build our future to ensure that we are sustainable and everything is up to standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sekoto. We also have several comments from Professor Kebe from Dakar. On the one side, basically says it's time that the energy sector benefits locally on our continent. Actually, it is like the African area is a big market for big companies from abroad, but the objective should be to also develop a local impact on population, creation of jobs and industrialization. There's a lot of comments about hydrogen. It seems to really be something that stimulates the interest of the audiences online. One question was how to promote the production of equipment for hydrogen in Africa. Professor Salmawi, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think it's very much important. Usually creating a market is a main driver for local production. I think the focus may be first to develop the hydrogen market, either for export or for local use, as I mentioned, for ammonia production. And then as it goes, we should have a parallel program to promote local equipment. Promoting local equipment through designing some programs by the government in order to give incentives for local producers, encourage international equipment producers to participate, but they will not participate unless there is a large or critical market size, so they can ensure that a substantial part of their equipment could be used inside, and then they might export additional equipment. So basically, I think the first step is to create the market itself, create a conducive investment environment, have a program for supporting local manufacturing and giving incentives to local manufacturers in order to produce technology transfer, adopting standards. I think all of this should be considered in order to that, because this could be considered like an externalities for a hydrogen program. So creating more jobs, attracting more international investments, this is a kind of more externalities for the business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the panelists for their fantastic contributions. I think the Q&A is closed now. And I would like to pass on to Francois Oti for his final thoughts and also some explanations on how the regional center in Nairobi can support African countries to become more active.
Thank you, Gabriela, IEC Communication Director, for the moderation. I should say thank you to IEC President, to all IEC officers. Thanks to Dr. Hassan Hassani, President of the Egypt National Committee of IEC. I would like to thank all the panelists for really the time and the work you have done. I want also to thank all our colleagues in IEC who work hardly for this open session. To conclude this insightful GM open session, let's note the following. From Kenya and Senegal, we learned that IEC CA systems are successfully implemented in Africa, supporting technical regulation for safer electrotechnical products on the domestic market. IEC CA systems are beneficial for Africa in terms of saving of cost, time, and resources. Let's replicate these two examples all over Africa. From AFSEC, we learned that IEC international standards help to accelerate the regional and continental harmonization of standards, supporting the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the AFSEM, the African Single Electricity Market. We would like to invite other African regional economic communities to follow AFSEC steps by adopting IEC international standards to accelerate the sub-region harmonization of standards. IEC has initiated signature of regional adoption agreements with regional economic communities. We already signed with AFSEC, of course, but with IDSMO, which is the Arab Industrial Development Standardization and Mines Organization. And soon we'll sign with the ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West Africa States. This process is aimed to give right to regional economic communities to adopt international IEC international standards to facilitate the regional harmonization process and to support these regional markets. From the session 2, we learned that new technologies such as artificial intelligence, sustainable green energy like hydrogens, and the future continental and global electricity grid interconnection need IEC work to foster access to electricity in Africa. All this will be possible by investing in the young professionals. They need to be informed, to be trained, and to be involved properly. At the end of this session, we would like to say that IEC in Africa and Africa in IEC are linked together as the two sides of a same coin. Regarding the first side, IEC in Africa, we'll say that since 2015, IEC has inaugurated the IEC Regional Center for Africa based in Nairobi to support Africa. Its role is to serve as a resource for members and affiliates in Africa in terms of trainings, promotion of Africa's participation, and to link Africa to the IEC global community of experts. The IEC Regional Center for Africa has the full support of IEC officers and IEC Secretariat. We are very happy to see now you can see it, the IEC President, the IEC Secretary General, and that is what really shows the support we have. For example, IEC Secretary General Philip Metzger will be visiting in November, almost next week, some African countries, namely Cote d'Ivoire, Morocco, Kenya, and South Africa. During this visit, he'll have contact with decision makers and high-level managers in Africa. He'll participate in roundtables, speak to media, exchange with national committees. We hope that this will reinforce the IEC presence in Africa and help to have better setting for the national committees in Africa. Regarding the second side of the coin, Africa in IEC, we need more commitment of African countries. We need to have more IEC members and IEC system members. We need to have more full members, more associate members. We need also to have these IEC members to attract more experts from the different stakeholders so that it be possible to participate in the technical work by initiating proposals, commenting working documents, voting, managing technical secretariat, chairing some IEC TCs, and using the IEC work. Third, we need also African countries to be sitting in the IEC governance bodies, to actively engage, to influence positively IEC governance, and to have the Africa's voice heard. To reach this level, most African IEC national committees need to better understand the IEC work, its impact and benefits. For each African country, and with reference to the UN SDGs, national development plans or national strategies are developed. National committees need to be connected to those plans and strategies in their daily work. They need also to be connected to the IEC strategic plan with its 3 themes and 9 strategic goals. Finally, the takeaway of the recent World Standard Day was that standards promote well-being and better future. And the IEC president, in his opening remarks, said, the future will be an all-electric, connected, and sustainable society. From this quote, having IEC in Africa and Africa in IEC is for us a great tool for Africa to achieve the vision for a better future. Therefore, let's continue to work together to have IEC in Africa and Africa in IEC. But now I'm leaving the floor, if I can say it, to IEC Secretary General for the final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francois. Thank you very much, Gabriela, and everybody else on the team for having made this session possible. But thank you very much, most and above all, to all the participants. We have a great attendance, and in particular also to the panelists. We had high quality interventions, and we had a very, very interactive session here for 2.5 hours. I think that is testament to the relevance, the importance of this open session this year, IEC in Africa and Africa in IEC. I cannot say this without, of course, expressing how sad I am that we could not do this session face-to-face together in Africa, in Cairo. And I would like to salute Dr. Hassanin, the president of the Egyptian National Committee, and his entire team for everything they did to receive us in Cairo for this meeting, which unfortunately had to be converted into a virtual event at the very last moment. I will be meeting Dr. Hassanin very shortly in Cairo as soon as we find a date in the coming weeks, because I think it's extremely important that we stand in solidarity with our National Committee of Egypt, and that we continue our great cooperation. If this were now in Cairo, we would now have a great networking session after the official end of this meeting. That is something which will have to take place through other means and at a later opportunity. But I think we've had extremely relevant discussions and contributions to the question of IEC in Africa and Africa in IEC. I wanted to add one additional dimension, which is a new dimension for the IEC. It's called the IEC Global Impact Fund, the GIF, as we call it in short. We are ready to launch our first project in this ESG initiative that we launched just very recently under the leadership of Jo Kops' predecessor, Dr. Yimbiao Xu from China. And I am very glad that the first project will be a project in Africa. I think this is also linking up nicely with the theme of Africa in the IEC. Francois Aoti has said it, we need more experts and also representatives in governing bodies of the IEC from Africa. I think you can make a real difference. You can also help our sustainability ambitions, because many of these solutions that are important in Africa are driving sustainability. And I think, therefore, it is really essential that we keep increasing our efforts at all the levels. I would like to end maybe with two quotes that were made, one from our good young professional colleague, Pizzo Sekoto. I think he brilliantly described the vibrancy and the potential of the African continent. And that's also something, of course, which is very relevant for the IEC. And on the other hand, I would also like to remind ourselves of what Mr. Tella told us. There cannot be a single electricity market in Africa without harmonized standards. And I think that should be motivation for all of us to double down on our efforts and to really have an even stronger connection between the African continent, its members in the IEC and the organization. So thank you very much for everything, and I look forward to seeing you very soon in Africa and elsewhere.
Thank you to all the speakers. Please all turn the cameras on. I think it's done. We'll have a little souvenir shot. And thank you also for a virtual applause from everybody, for our panelists, for the audience that has been following us eagerly on Zoom and also on live stream in Facebook. The recording will be available on YouTube. Please share it widely. We are checking with all the presenters if we can make the slides available, but I think that should be possible. And after our souvenir shot, I will declare this session closed. Thank you for your attention.